Oh, this is a great goal. Goal of my career right there. I remember for the rest of my career, this was replayed as my
goal of the century. Your right gluteus maximus scored the goal.
Why I was so far advanced, I have no idea. Why I was in the penalty area as a center back, I have no idea. Why I would be making that run, no idea.
Nobody else was.
But look at that technique.
Yes.
Just incredible. Well, they don't ask you how, they ask you how many.
On the table, Dr. JPT, bring the hard truth, set it free. On the table.
So when we first met, when you came into the MetroStars locker room, I immediately fell in love with the point that you wanted to make that people pronounced your name correctly. Because I've gone through life where people call me Gallucci. And there's no U, and CCI in Italian is Chi. Mm-hmm. So it's really Gallucci. So the first time you introduce yourself, everybody's walking up to you going, Goose, what's up? Great to have you at the MetroStars. This is awesome. Goose, this is your locker room. And I come over and say, hey, I'm John Gallucci, you know, of the training staff. And you go, well, I'm Jeff Agus. And I'm like, I like this guy. He cares about how people say his name. So ultimately, you and I meet in 2005 when you did a short stint, probably the shortest stint in your professional career at the MetroStars. But it was an amazing stint because you got to meet me.
Absolutely.
And if you think about it, 21 years later, you and I have crossed paths in many different places. So ultimately, you finish playing soccer. We'll get into your career in a minute. But then you jump into administration. And where is it? At Red Bull. I end up in the league office working in the medical department under the commissioners and kind of helping structure medical. You and I banter on a couple of different rules. And then you jump into Major League Soccer and ultimately become my boss.
Well, colleague, I'd like to say. I always work for you. It's just we may have different titles, but I feel like I'm always working
now
for you.
You sound like the team here.
Yeah, there we go.
So awesome. But listen, let's jump right in. Let's talk about you and your career. First and foremost, I'm ecstatic. Think about what you've accomplished. I mean, at UVA, think about what you've accomplished in your professional career. Think about what you've done for the American soccer. Think about what you've done for development in the game. If you had to pick any of those, where do you want to jump in first?
I've been fortunate. I think all of those places I've been has really been about the people. And it's the connection to people, I think, that makes those things so successful, those organizations successful. So I think it's really about who I've met. So you're a great example of, even though I was at the MetroStars for 1 year, having a lifelong relationship with somebody for that short a period of time is really what the sports are all about.
So if we look at your transition coming out of UVA, right? You played 4 years for legendary coach, manager Bruce Arena for 4 years. And you come right out, and all of a sudden you're drafted, and you end up playing for him again.
MLS started in 1996, and I was 26 or 27 at the time. Played with the national team, and there was sort of an allocation process where there were 2 foreigners and 2 domestic international players who were allocated to the 10 teams that were in MLS at the time. I knew that Bruce was going to be the coach at DC. I knew Kevin Payne was going to be the president there. I had an idea of what the organization wanted it to be like. I'd played at UVA 90 miles up the road or down the road from DC. And I knew it was a good place to start, or at least that's where I'd have the most comfort and an opportunity to begin my U.S. professional career, and jumped at it and was allocated to DC along with John Harkes, Marco Echeverri, and I believe the other one was Raul Diaz-Arce.
So think about this. Now, you're coming out of UVA, high-level Division I program, pretty much have everything at your fingertips. You're a star player, Division I soccer, championship, All-American. And as you said, it's 1996, and you jump into DC United, a brand new professional league. Now, as you know, our show here is on the table with Dr. Jag PT, talking about my years of sports medicine, dealing with athletes of your level and your caliber. What did you walk into at DC United? Because I'm going to share what I walked into in a second. But when you walk in on day one,
Yeah.
and tell us, what did you walk in?
I think everybody walked in with the hope and dream of having a domestic professional Division I soccer league. That's what all of us were working for years and years and years. And there were all kinds of leagues. I mean, you were part of a lot of different leagues, APSL, the MISL. There were just so many fractured indoor-outdoor leagues that we were hoping for a real Division I professional league, and MLS was the best opportunity. And so I think walking in on day one, it was a lot of hopes and dreams. We had no idea what the next couple of years would be like. To think that we'd be sitting here in JAG Physical Therapy talking about over 30 years of MLS is incredible. And I don't think we thought it was going to be as big as it has become. We were just hoping that we would be able to play in a domestic professional environment that we'd been dreaming about since we were kids.
So your politically correct answer is amazing. My quick response is I come out of working for Columbia University, Division I program. I come out of being a part-time athletic trainer in the summers for the New York Knicks, where you had everything at your fingertips. You had every type of specialty doctor. You had every type of direction to get an image. You had physical therapists, athletic trainers, chiropractors, primary care physicians, orthopedics working collaboratively. I walked into my first day in 1999 at the Metro Stars, and we didn't have an electrical stim unit. We didn't have water. We were pulling water from a hose on the side of the building at Kane University. So now you go from UVA to DC United, and although you had in our league a longtime athletic trainer, Rick Gooder, that came out of the college ranks, came out of the U.S. soccer ranks, but ultimately you had everything, a performance center, you had nutritionists. DC United, you walk in, you got Bruce, same thing you had for 4 years, but talk about, like, what was the performance center? A bike and a dumbbell?
Yeah, I mean, basically that was it. But I will say at DC, we were, because of the vision of Kevin and Bruce, we were in a different place than anybody else in the league. We had our own facility. We were actually training at Old Herndon Park where the Washington Redskins, now Commanders, had been training. And so we had a building and a field.
Built for a professional sport.
Built for professional sports. And so no other team had this. Other teams had to go and get on a bus or get in a van, change in a dressing room and go somewhere else.
Day one, you guys had structure.
We had structure and we had a vision. And when you think about what's on the back of the DC United shirt, which is tradition, we started with the word tradition and we tried to build that.
And 4 MLS Cups you had there?
Well, let's start at the beginning. We were 2-8.
Right.
To start. So there was no hopes of, 4 MLS Cup champions, 3 of which I took part of. We were just hoping to get through the first season, especially with a 2-8 start. We revamped, and to Bruce's credit, who knows the system well, operates in the system with an expert eye, changed probably half of our team. We went, I think, 16-16 or 15-15. I can't remember. We were about even at the end of the season, got in the playoffs and made a run. And I believe there, were some games against New York Metro Stars that both of our histories sort of pivoted on that 1 or 2 games.
I'd probably say, and again, I came in the league in 99, and structure was really only at one team, where everybody was playing catch-up. The interesting thing is the first administration I was under, the Metro Stars, had a very similar vision. And their goal was to build structure, a practice facility, ultimately get to where you guys were. But my first job was literally asking the head athletic trainer of the New York Knicks, Mike Saunders, legendary Mike Saunders, 27 years as a head athletic trainer. of the Knicks if I can borrow Gatorade. And he goes, John, you don't borrow Gatorade. I said, well, the team may send the Knicks a check someday. And he goes, would you just go take the Gatorade and bring it? And I ended up bringing Gatorade to the team. And I always like to tell the commissioner, I was the first one to bring Gatorade into Major League Soccer before we had. So I like to tweak the commissioner a little bit about that. Let's transition, right? So now you're 4 MLS Cups. But let's talk about your U.S. national team history. Let's talk about from the youth level into really making the main team. What was that like for you as a player, as a person?
Yeah, I mean, my history with U.S. soccer runs to the age of 15. So I started with youth national teams at the age of 14 or 15 years old. And by the time I got to the senior national team and to the World Cup, I'd played at every single level, including futsal. So I played in a futsal tournament, played in the Olympics. I think I played on everything.
Which Olympics?
2000 in Australia. I think the only thing I didn't...
I think you went for the free trip to Australia.
That was an unbelievable
You know, I
time.
turned down a wrestling event, a U.S. wrestling event in Australia, and till this day I kick myself that I never went to Australia.
That was, I mean, I can't even tell you how important that was for so many different reasons. We wound up in 4th place, which is probably the worst you can place in an Olympics because there's nothing but a certificate. But the memories, and we had Clive Charles, who was our head coach, and Clive was a big reason. It's a big reason why I'm in Portland right now. Clive was such an instrumental person in my life in a very similar way that Bruce was, in a very, very similar way that you are, in a very similar way that people that I have just a deep, profound respect for.
Who was on that team with you?
Brad Friedel, Claudio Reyna, Frankie Hayduck, Danny Califf. Basically, it was a younger team. I was one of the overage players, and this team had qualified, so I knew stepping into this, I was sort of an outsider coming in. And to be selected as a defender was really said a lot about what Clive wanted from his team. And I think there was a lot more about the leadership aspect than the on-field aspect. So I'd always wanted to play in Olympics. And I was just over the moon getting selected for the Olympics when in that year when I was playing for DC United, and believe that was my last year at DC, we were not doing well, didn't qualify for the playoffs. So this was sort of a light at the end of the tunnel.
So as you know, I've treated athletes from all different
Oh, yeah, I know.
federations. It could be wrestling, could be skiing, it could be lacrosse, it could be soccer, whatever it is, baseball, whatever it is. I always ask the guys that go to the Olympics, what was the most special moment at the Olympic Games? Not the soccer game, not about the team. What was your most special moment at the Olympics?
Well, as you know, soccer is not like the rest of the Olympics where we're in one place.
Mm-hmm. Multiple.
We were in multiple places. We started in Canberra, went to Adelaide, went to Melbourne, ended in Sydney. The special part was getting to know my team, getting to know Clive, getting to know the staff, but just having the experience of getting to know Australia in a way that few people at the Olympics did. We wound up, when we qualified for the medal rounds, we wound up going to Sydney, and we stayed 1 or 2 days in the Olympic Village. So we got like a taste of it, but it was chaos. If you've never been in an Olympic Village, it's just
a lot
chaos for good reasons. And I think it's a really special environment.
I have people equate it to Rockefeller Center around the holidays. That's how much chaos is going on.
Yes, with an EMD concert kind of kicking in the middle of it at night. It's a crazy, because by the time you get there around the medal time, which is the end of the tournament, everyone's pretty much done. And so everyone's just having a good time and partying, and it's an amazing environment. And you get to meet all kinds of different people you would
From
never,
around the world.
Around the world, huge stars, dream team, that type of athlete that you'll never get to experience in your life. So it was absolutely amazing. But it was not going to help us prepare for the medal round games because there were so many distractions. And so what we wound up doing was going to a hotel in Sydney and kind of bunkering down there for a couple of days, which I think was a good decision in the end.
Awesome. Have you been back since?
not
been back to Australia
since. I haven't been back, but I loved it. I mean, it was
Supposed to be amazing.
such a great country. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
So
Well, let me know when you're going.
yeah, we'll go together.
Yeah, there we go.
You just got to get permission from my wife. Now to the men's national team
Mm-hmm.
preparing for a World Cup. Talk about the difference between preparing for the Olympics, physically, mentally, preparing for a World Cup. Kind of really give me a picture of what goes through your head.
The Olympics are a U23 event with 3 overage players. The World Cup is completely different. It's the best of the best. It's the best players of every country. You know, my legacy with the World Cup started in '92 when I was in residency in Mission Viejo, trying to make the '94 team. And there's a whole story around that. But I was released 2 weeks before the World Cup started, and it was just sort of devastating. Didn't get a chance to play in the World Cup, especially here in this country, which was everybody's dream to play in a World Cup, but especially here in this country. Didn't make that team, but stayed on, rejoined the national team after that, made the World Cup team in '98. Had a really, really difficult experience in '98. Didn't play a minute, although I played in almost all of the qualifiers. And that's a whole nother conversation and probably a documentary that's being made at some point.
Awesome. I can't wait to watch it.
We wound up, I think, 32nd out of 32 teams, so it was not a...
Who was coaching that team?
That was Steve Sampson, and Clive Charles was the assistant coach. But we just fell apart, and for a whole lot of reasons that we go into in a couple different podcasts. But then conversely, I made the 2002 World Cup, and Bruce Arena was the coach with Dave Sarachan as the assistant, and it was a completely different experience. We wound up losing in the quarterfinals to Germany on a contentious handball, but the experience of being in Seoul and Japan and going through beating Portugal, who were the golden team, tying South Korea, who was the home country. Eventually we lost to Poland, and we qualified because South Korea beat Portugal. So there's a whole litany of things that happened, qualifying and then playing against Mexico, which for me still stands. I didn't play because I got injured in the Poland game, but
If I recall, calf injury.
yeah, just completely blew
Why
up.
they keep me around? I
Right,
remember injuries. I remember injuries.
Yeah, it's cyclical. The performance staff tried to push us as hard as they can, so we wound up getting injured and come back to the medical staff, and it was this vicious cycle. But in 2002, we wound up beating Mexico 2-0, and that was the beginning of 2-0, and just an incredible experience beating Mexico in a game that meant probably more to the Mexican people and Mexican players than it did to us at the time. But it was just an incredible, incredible experience. Then moved on to play Germany, one of the best teams in the world, won a few World Cups in the past, and just barely lost 1-0. But I think we had a lot to be proud about in that tournament. But my experience is pretty extensive, and I've been pretty fortunate. And again, I really credit a lot of the people along the way, the medical staffs, performance staffs, the coaching staffs, for just being able to get to that level and having that experience.
The day against Mexico. What's going through, as a player, your head before the game?
Well, again, I was injured, so I didn't have the pressure of having to play in the game.
Right.
But as
You're still a leader on the team. You're
Yeah.
still supporting your teammates.
you know how big a game this is. You moved on to the next round. It's knockout, so it's do or die. Someone's moving on, someone's not. Someone's going to be happy, someone's going to be terribly upset. And we had prepared for this. We knew Mexico. They were from our region, so there were no surprises. And I remember we got there about an hour and 45 minutes before kickoff, which is about normal, hour and 45 to 2 hours. Walk out onto the field, and there's the Mexican team in the center circle, just laughing and joking. And we knew that they did not take us seriously. And we were incredibly happy, because we knew that they were not going to take us as seriously as we had been taking this game. And from the moment we kicked off, that was the experience we had. 1-0, they're down. Probably a body punch at that point. Second goal comes from Landon, I think late in the first half or early in the second half. and it's to the jaw. It's a TKO, and they were trying to get back in the game and really could never get back in the game. And I don't think they knew what hit them, and I think they didn't take it seriously. Maybe not, but at least it didn't appear that way from the way they were laughing and joking. But we were incredibly proud of what we had accomplished. And I remember after the game, the two buses passed one another as we were coming out, and they were waiting for their players, and we were just banging on the side of our glass at them, and just, I mean, there was so much pride, and I can't really go into what we said, but yeah, I'm just glad that there was a bus separating the two of us, because it's pretty contentious between the two teams.
I think that's awesome. So now you transition back. You became a journeyman. All of a sudden, you went from being consistent 8 years, UVA, DC United, U.S. national team, constantly, in the so-called circle of Bruce Arena level. Now you decide you're going to move on at different places, and you did a little stint in one team. We have the pleasure to meet in 2005, although we've met in passing, but we get to meet as colleagues, me being the sports medicine guy, you being the player. To me, unfortunately, at that time, the Metro Stars, which the next year transitioned to Red Bull, to me, it was like every good player comes here to retire. And then I used to say, maybe it's me. I'm out there talking about a business I'm starting JAG Physical Therapy, and running to another office to treat patients that weren't pro athletes. And here you are coming in, and we had a bunch of characters in the locker room. We were led by legendary coach Bob Bradley, who was coaching and putting together. And let's face it, Bob loves to bring in youth, and you come in as sort of the elder.
Yes.
That's how I looked at it. He was bringing in someone with experience, someone with structure, that understood how to organize a team. You picked up a couple of nicks, this, that, and the other thing. You walk into a training room that was sort of not your normal quiet place. You had me, a loud, obnoxious Staten Islander. You had my colleague Stu, from Queens. You had a couple of great, crazy doctors, but everybody cared about the athletes, wanted to help the athletes. What's going through your head when you walk into that locker room? More importantly, what was that transition to say, this is going to be the year I hang up my cleats?
Yeah, wow, there's a lot in that one.
A lot of unpacking on that one.
Well, so I'd been at DC for 5 years, and we won 3 championships. And then I moved from what was considered the best team in the league to the worst team in the league in San Jose, who had not qualified for the championships for a couple of years. Wound up winning two championships in 4 years. So
I tell everybody it was because of you.
Well, no, it was not. It was because of a great team around me. But wound up winning 2 championships in 4 years, and so we resurrected the team, and then wound up moving back to the East Coast to New York, and had a really strong relationship with Bob. Bob was actually our assistant coach under Bruce the first year at DC United, and he went on to do some incredible things with Chicago. So we had developed a relationship, and he knew what I was about. And my understanding was he wanted to bring more leadership and more experience to the team. Eddie Pope was there at the time. Eddie Gavin, they drafted Michael Bradley, who was 17 and having his first year. So
it was like you and Eddie were the adults.
Yeah. Yeah, there
even
was,
the day he disciplined Richie Williams. I don't know if you remember that, but we won't go into it.
Yeah, well, Richie had left by that point.
Right.
I think Jaime Moreno was there.
Yes, Jaime came in.
Had left. And I think we had wound up trading Eddie in the preseason or shortly thereafter to Salt Lake. And so I lost somebody who I'd played with and I knew was a top player and an incredible person. So there was a lot of changes going on with the Metro Stars. But I'd always wanted to come to New York and really make a mark. And it was the one place I wish I had more time. But we wound up not doing what I'd hoped at the beginning of the season, which was win a championship for New York.
You're technically a leader. You were brought in as a leader on the Olympic team. You're brought in as a leader on the World Cup team. You're brought in a couple of different clubs to truly lead. So it's evident you were recognized of leadership qualities. That doesn't come easily. Think about now your transition from a player into a Major League Soccer executive officer? I believe you became the chief soccer officer. I don't even remember what your title was. GM?
Well, after I retired in 2005 from the Metro Stars, Bruce hired me as a technical director for Red Bull. So they just transitioned in 2006, middle of 2006, to Red Bull, and I came in with Bruce, John Harkes, Richie Williams, who was on the coaching staff. I was at Red Bull for 4 years in various capacities, but then moved to MLS as a technical director there too. So my remit was really match enhancement and making sure that the game was served with a voice. That's where it all started. It moved on and escalated, and I eventually became the senior vice president for competition and medical. And I've got a great story about the medical piece because I had no medical background at all, other than the stim and ice machine that I think we shared, as well as was it ART?
ART, yes, ART.
Man, this guy made me cry from doing this.
So part of the toolbox.
I had a very limited knowledge of medical, but to your point, it was more about the leadership and moving a department, which was one person at the time, into something that now, and you're leading this with Jackie Mynarski and a whole...
And Dr. George Champas, Chief Medical Officer.
With a whole host of very, very good and qualified people into a vision of what we had always hoped it to be, which was to have it on its own, really prioritizing player health and safety, which is where we are today.
You go from a locker room to a suit. You go from a field to an office.
No suit. Well, suit for a little while.
So suit for a little while. And now you're actually in, and again, I'll call a spade. You're in an office and you're talking to some people that know the game. I mean, think about some of the administrators you work with that get the game. They may have played at different levels, but they've never really played at your level. And then you have administrators in a room that never kicked a soccer ball. And you're in there talking about competition, regulations, you're talking about medical, performance, care, nutrition, hydration, and you knew I was going to bring it up. We go into COVID lockdown. COVID lockdown, and as you said, you didn't have a medical background. You had medical professionals that surrounded you. But what is your first thought when we go into 2020, COVID lockdown, everybody wants us to play, we're running into the bubble, we come up with this concept, which you were part of the decision-making to go into it, we're going to run into the bubble. What is your thought process that you're in charge of medical? Think about it.
Yeah, well, I'll back up a little bit. I'd been serving as the head of competition for a number of years. So I started in 2011. I think by 2014 or 15, I wound up as a vice president of competition and senior vice president. And Mark Abbott came to me in 2018, middle of 2018, and asked me to oversee the medical department. I said, I know nothing about medical. I knew you were on board, so that at least was saving me. I knew.
He was like, go talk to John.
Exactly. And I knew some of the people that were in the medical area, and I knew they were good people, and I knew I could work with that, and I knew that there was opportunity there. And especially given what I'd wanted to do, the whole reason I was in the league office was to serve the player, because when I was younger, the old NASL went out of business, went defunct, and the whole purpose in being at MLS was to create a viable, sustainable league and a legacy for players who had played and could then move on. So I wanted, it was more of an act of service than anything else, and I wanted to make sure that there was a league for people to play in, for players to come to. But ultimately, when the medical opportunity came up and Mark sat down and asked me if I'd wanted to do it, I jumped at the chance, not knowing there'd be a global pandemic 18 months later. And to your point, in 2020, literally, I remember it was Friday the 13th, March 13th, the NBA shut down, MLB shut down, everything shut down, we shut down, and nobody knew what to do. I remember going outside, no cars. There was no flights. It was an eerie quiet, and nobody knew what was happening. And over time, we just developed this crazy plan of getting back. MLS is back, going to a bubble in Florida, in Orlando, and playing a tournament, trying to resurrect the league. We had played 2 weeks of a 34, 36-week schedule, and we were 2 weeks in. And so we had a 2-week schedule, we had an MLS's back schedule of a round-robin tournament, and then we had another part of the season. So it was an incredible opportunity and experience to be with people and continue to push the league forward.
So now you built this department, which again, it was, you said one, it was 1.5 people. I was the half.
No, you were the one.
As you know, I was running JAG Physical Therapy, and a mutual colleague of ours was sort of doing the administration, Evan Dabby, who moved on to greener pastures. And ultimately, there was a lot of change. And literally, you built a department that now serves performance and health and safety throughout the league. So congratulations on that.
Well, it wasn't me. I mean, this was everybody.
It was teamwork.
It was everybody.
Which that leadership and teamwork brought it together.
Yeah, of course.
Your communication skills are unbelievable. So,
well, my business skills aren't as good. That's why I said, John, I don't know what's happening here. Tell me what I need to do. And I think without you and others, it wouldn't have been possible.
It is interesting as we've evolved. And as most people know, I'm involved in the Medical Administration League for 25 years. And it has evolved from where you had one doctor making all decisions, that now you have 30 medical teams throughout the league, and policies and procedures and implications if athletes aren't taken care of well enough.
It's way more sophisticated, complex, but it serves the player, and that was the goal.
So now you're in an administrative role. Budget meetings, you're talking about safety, health, which you jumped in with both hands and both feet. You're talking about competitions, and there's always disagreements of what is the true game, which we'll get into a little bit later. But talk about now. I mean, think about it. You're at the Portland Thorns FC, and it's a different game to the point that it's the men's game versus the women's game. But you're taking all those leadership qualities, you're taking that administrative background, you're putting it all together, and now, what do you think your skill sets have to be now?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a men's versus women's. I would say it's a sport.
Right.
And one of the reasons why, I wanted to come to the Portland Thorns was multifactorial. One, I wanted to get back into the club environment. One thing at the league, you do get a chance to serve, and it's a great privilege and an honor to do that. But you really don't get the testing, the day-to-day, the week-to-week of pass-fail like you do as a player. And I really, really miss that. So I wanted to get back in the club environment. So the Thorns obviously gave me an opportunity to do that. I wanted to be in a place where we had good ownership, that they were investing in the sport, in the team, in infrastructure, and in spades had that with the Bethal family at Raj Sports. Alex and Lisa Bethal, who brother and sister team, who had that up. There was a performance center that is the only dual elite professional performance center in the world that houses the NWSL team and the Portland Thorns, and the WNBA team, the Portland Fire, who's in their first year. That there's no other elite performance center that houses 2 professional teams. And 3, the community, the engagement with the community and the fan support. We just played Angel City yesterday. 20,000 fans showed up. I mean,
it's amazing.
Amazing. So I see it really as the opportunity, and I really view it in a very similar light as to where MLS was in the early 2000s. It's an opportunity to build. It was an opportunity to provide a structure and opportunity for athletes and players and staff. And it's been incredible. I've really enjoyed it. I love Portland. I love the West Coast. The ownership group is incredible. So it just ticks so many boxes, and I'm as I said, I'm really honored to be part of it.
As a competitive player that's played at every level, now you're in charge of building a team. You're in charge of building a staff to run that team. You're in charge of everything from performance to coaching, development of youth, whatever it may be. Kind of tell me that competitiveness, like, every now and then you've got to let the coaches lead, right? I mean, but you're a competitor. You've been competing your entire life. So how do you kind of balance that?
It's hard because you all want to win and you all want to succeed and ensure you leave a mark. Because I think for any player, and for any staff member, it's really about legacy. That's really what you are there for. You want to create a legacy. And I walked into a team that had already established legacy. It is the most successful women's soccer team in the NWSL, if not the world, in terms of what it's been able to accomplish. So there has been a legacy there, and you want to continue that legacy and make sure that you're winning championships. And the push-pull of leading it and trying to influence it, but making sure people have the opportunity to do their jobs, have the opportunity to succeed, and have the opportunity to create opportunity to advance and develop is really what my goal is. It's more of a long-term view than it is winning on Saturday. That's what our coaches and our players are there to do. My job is to, and the vision of the club is to be the number one women's sports or soccer team in the world, and we do that by putting a championship caliber team on and off the field. So with that lens, I think everything we do is trying to create excellence at the best level.
Heat of the game, though. You're like last 6 minutes of the game. And your coach on the sideline that you chose to be down there makes a substitution. Are you biting your hand if you disagree with that?
No.
Or are you...
My job is
you gave him the reins and...
My job is to...
Or her the reins?
My job is to evaluate his decisions, his or her decisions, and their job is to ensure that they're making the best decisions
Compete
possible.
On the field.
That's right.
Right? It's got to be tough, though.
It is, because game day...
I've seen you passionate on the sideline.
Game day, you're the most helpless. There's nothing you can do to affect the game or impact the game. All the work that you've done has been done months ago, weeks ago, right. Even hours ago in some cases. But I would love to enjoy the game more than what I do, but you've got so much on the line. You're so invested. You're just hoping and rooting for the players and the staff so much that it's hard to step back and enjoy the game. But you do, and that's the part, the competitive part that I really love the most.
All right, so now I'm going to go on a complete tangent, right? So let's go back to 2000 to 2004.
Okay.
I come into the league in 1999, and I'm saying to myself, wow, there's some really special people in this league. We've got a guy that's dyeing his hair blonde. We got another guy that's mohawking it in color in the middle. We've got the beautiful locks of hair that Jeff Eggers has streaming through.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that was really people trying to get picked up for a TV cameo, try to get sponsors, try to make a name for yourself in a league that was trying to crash into an already crowded professional leagues in America? Think about this. We came in, you've got Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, you had professional lacrosse,
yeah.
and now you jump in and, all right, we're going to try this soccer thing again. And then you've got Mike Pecky bleaching his hair. You got Tony Meola every other week changing something to his hair. And we have your unbelievable locks in the wind running across the field. What was going through all of your heads? Was it really to make a name for yourself? Was it to make a name for the sport? Or was it, hey, that was the hairdo of the day? You didn't think I was going there, did you?
I didn't. I think it was part boredom, but part branding. I mean, you could see this at a lot of different levels. Like when you look at somebody like Alexi, who's got the red hair and the goatee and the guitar, that's a brand. Like that was his thing. And I think there were players who just wanted to do their thing and create their own brand in however they did. And there were a lot of players who did it a different way, did it on the field. I mean, Tab Ramos, for example, never really had that, but his brand was just the incredible...
Tab Ramos.
Tab Ramos. I mean...
The first player ever signed in Major League Soccer.
Carney legend.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, everybody did it a different way, but I will say that, when you look at what the original teams were like, you had the Clash, Metro Stars with the taxi. The teams were trying to create brands.
Yeah.
The only one that really was not branded in that way was DC United, and that was the tradition piece.
Right.
And that's held true throughout the throughput of the existence of the club.
But think about the other leagues in 2000 to 2005, right? When you played in the NFL, and we know things have changed a little bit. I mean, the socks had to be with T. You were not allowed to wear certain things. The NBA, shorts were the same height, socks were the same height. I mean, everything has evolved. Do you think MLS was at the cutting edge trying to change up that it's not just about the team, it's about the player? And listen, a couple of the players in the league may have had branding. They may have not been the best on the pitch, but they had branding. Do you think that was one of the things that were different about Major League Soccer, and maybe that gave some of its sustainability?
I think that soccer coming into a very crowded landscape, especially playing in the footprint that it had at the time, it was trying to open a door, and it was trying to create legitimacy in any way it could, and legitimacy came through a lot of crazy ideas. I mean, we had a shootout. We started the league with a 35-yard shootout instead of penalty kicks. There was a lot of ideas that
To be different
and to create our own niche. Interestingly, what really wound up happening is MLS and soccer in this country lives in two different worlds. It's the world of U.S. sports, and for us, because it's soccer or football,
It's the soccer world,
the global sport. And so you have to be both authentic to the game, the global game, and you have to live in the U.S. sports landscape of entertainment and creating a brand. And that's the dichotomy of our sport. We have playoffs. Nowhere else in the world do they have playoffs. We have had shootouts. We had penalty kicks. It's a whole different appeal. But ultimately, and I give Commissioner Garber, who came in 98, 99 for his first year, he went back and made the game authentic and created rules with Ivan and a whole host of people, moved more toward the authentic brand, and that's what I think created more sustainability and more legitimacy for our league. But there's always this part of it that's going to be unique.
All right, now I've thrown you a bunch of layups. I'm going to give you a hard question.
Oh, jeez.
So the hard question, it's really for me, right? I'm the sports medicine guy. I'm the physical therapist. I'm the athletic trainer.
Dim and ice.
So, well, it's a little bit more than that. I do have degrees. But anyway, you're looking at, and again, I know how to take care of a player that's injured. I know how to take care of people, getting them better. But the biggest argument I've heard from the so-called senior legends of U.S. soccer. So, when you talk about Tony Meola, you talk about Alexi Lalas, you talk about Ter Bramos, yourself, I've had these conversations. I've also, if we really want to get old, I've had the conversation with a couple of the old NASL guys, Shep Messing. And, Shep is 20 years before your generation, right? 20, we'll say, right?
Yeah.
All of you complain about the same exact thing.
I can't wait for this.
Youth soccer in America.
Okay.
The development of a true player, the development of a soccer player. Who does it different on this coast, East Coast, West Coast? Who does it different South versus North? I mean, it's amazing. And again, when you look at the successful coaches like a Bob Bradley, Bruce Arena, Bruce seems to be a systemic guy, builds a system, he builds a process. Bob loves to develop players, both successful, both MLS champs, both coached the World Cup, both successful for the U.S. in World Cups, right? But what is the problem? Why can't you guys all just get in a room and slug it out and say, this is the way we're going to develop our players? What's the problem?
Well, we've done that. I mean, MLS has done that, and they've created, Next Pro as sort of the player pathway. NWSL is doing that also, and again, very similar lineages and timelines. Player development in this country is unique because it hasn't been player development; it's been team development. Really, what happened?
Great point.
What happened before MLS came in is you had coaches who developed teams, winning teams, and that was cyclical. The more you won, the better athlete you got, but it had nothing to do with developing a player. It just had to do with winning a game. And so you didn't have to be a good soccer team to win games. You just had to be more athletic, which meant you didn't always have to develop players. MLS in the professional game, not just in this country, but in every country, is really about how do we develop the one or two players on a team for the first team. That's a whole different model and concept than winning. Winning at all costs. And it's also an industry. I mean, the amount of money people pay for play is astronomical, and you wind up potentially missing players who are in underserved communities. You wind up,
and not just soccer. You have the U.S. government looking into this whole concept of pay to play and alienating people that can't afford to pay, and who gets a scholarship, who doesn't. I mean, that could be an entirely other podcast. But I do have one question for you. All right, when it comes to youth development, I've heard there's the French way, the English way, the Italian way, the South American way. When do we ever hear it's the American way? When does U.S. soccer finally say, and U.S. soccer, MLS, and NWSL finally say this is the American way? Now, if you remember the 2010 World Cup that Bob Bradley coached, they talked about the grit, the performance, the level of intensity, and American soccer is all about the level of fitness versus skill. But, the first question for you is, when does it happen that we have an American development way of soccer? And I hear what we're saying about MLS, which is awesome that we're going in that direction. But when do we say we don't want to be English style? We don't want to be South American style. We want to be American style of play. And then the second question to that is, what is the American style of play?
We are a continent, not a country. When you think about how many Englands would fit in the United States, when you think about how many Germanys would fit in the United States, and we have immigration that comes here from all of those countries. And so when you think about, the New York player is Italian, is Mexican, is Colombian, what is the identity of that region to the Pacific Northwest, which may be Canadian or Asian? It's such a diverse country in terms of ideas and thinking. And so I don't know that you can say there's a style. I think what you can say is there's a lot of different styles, and that's what makes our style unique in the sense that we can blend that together. I will say that one of the things that has been a characteristic of the American player, and this is at any level in any sport, is the mentality, never giving up. I mean, and this is why a lot of our players went to the Premier League and played, especially our goalkeepers, Friedel, Casey, Miola, Howard. I mean, there was always this never give up attitude, and that has served us well in a lot of different sports.
An American worker, fight.
But that's not the only thing. I mean, soccer/football is incredibly technical, incredibly tactical, and so you have to have all of those components. The fight, you have to have the technical expertise, the tactical acumen. All of that blends together. So, we've been on this journey. I mean, the NASL started in the 80s, was defunct for 20 years. There was really never a professional team or level until the MLS came in, and now the NWSL came in. And we've only been at this for a couple decades as compared to 100 years, over 100 years in other countries. It's going to take time to create that identity. When you see what Cindy Parlow-Cohn is doing on leadership at U.S. Soccer and developing its own facility in Atlanta now that just opened up a couple weeks ago. I mean, those are all aspirational ideas and concepts that we never had a decade ago, and those are realities now. And those are the things that will create an identity over time, but it's going to take decades before we get to that point. Until that point, I think we should not be afraid to support all of the different ideas we have and the different types of players we have and bring them together. And that really comes down to identification, coaching, communication. But we are living, and as I said before, and to go full circle, in a continent with 3 different time zones, We have different surfaces. We have different temperatures. You can be playing in 90-degree weather in Miami and go to Montreal and it's snowing. I mean, it's just so different than any other country. To fly from Portland to Washington, D.C. is 3,000 miles. That's like going from London to Russia, which almost never happens. So travel is an incredibly difficult and challenging part of our experience. So as I said before, it's multifactorial. It takes time. It takes investment. I think all of those things are happening at the NWSL level for sure, at the MLS level for sure, but a little bit patient too.
We got to be patient. We've got to be patient. So speaking about patience, so as you know, on the table, Dr. Jag PT, my team.
Speaking of patience,
my team
literally
came up with this concept of, this podcast is not just going to be about the people I'm interviewing, but about something that people could take a pearl away, wisdom away, about healthcare, about performance, about today, of course, we're doing our World Cup series with you and a couple of other guys. And the concept is preparing the children. If you had to give, and as you know, JAG physical therapy, it's not just about treatment. We do a tremendous amount of prevention. We probably do as much prevention to keep people off our tables, which is a horrible business model.
Yeah.
But we probably do so much prevention that it's probably equal to how much treatment, because we want people to enjoy sports. I mean, as you know, pickleball is amazing. We wrote a book on pickleball to prevent it. I have the soccer injury prevention book. I have the baseball prevention book. And ultimately, now you have been at every level. You've developed players. You've administrated players. You've administrated leagues. You're administrating teams. You've got your own daughters that you've developed, and maybe they didn't go into sports, but you've developed them into adults at this point. If you had to give a parent 8 to 14 years old, think about that span, 8 to 14 years old, and you had to give them your heart and soul tip for their athlete to develop in the sport of soccer, what would be it? Quick, go.
have fun.
I love that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that more the people that you're going to interview say something similar, because ultimately, if it's not fun, they're not going to do it, or they're not going to want to do it. If it's not because they want to be there, then they won't, and they'll see it as something negative. Ultimately, if you can't have fun doing something and going out and being with your friends or learning a new skill or being part of something bigger than you, you're not gonna want to be there. So I think having fun is the core principle of not just soccer, but I think anything you do. If you're not enjoying it, it's work.
Wow, that's awesome. Have fun. I love it. I love it. So, Jeff, the World Cup is coming up. Like, give me your insight of what's going to happen in the next few weeks in the United States of America when we kick it off. What is your opinions?
Well, we've got, if you think about what a Super Bowl is, think about it times 100. This is, I mean, the World Cup makes the Super Bowl look small. It's a celebration of the sport. Because it's been revamped, it's now, I believe, 48 teams coming here instead of the 34 that normally is a World Cup. So you get more of everything. It's going to be in 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, US. It is going to be the biggest party sport / event that's been in the Northern Hemisphere for decades. So for fans of the sport, it's going to be an incredible opportunity to absorb environments and cultures around the world. For people who are interested or curious about the sport, it's an opportunity to really get a sense and a taste of what the global game is all about. But ultimately, it's going to be an incredible opportunity for the U.S. team and for our game to grow and expand in this country.
Do you think we get as much of a kick as we did in the last U.S. World Cup as far as the game of football, soccer?
Yeah, because in '94 we weren't a soccer country.
Right.
I mean, this was the first.
We had no pro leagues.
No pro leagues.
Pro league active.
Right.
That was active.
There really wasn't understanding what the sport was, and I think that sort of kicked off and sort of opened up the idea of what this could become. But for the last 40 years, we've developed on that. It's grown, and we've become a soccer country. We've become a football country. So now it'll be interesting to see with that experience what this will be all about.
That's awesome. So just to end real quick, we've been friends for 21 years. If you wanted the audience, to know something that you feel is burning in your heart that you need to share with our audience, what would that be before we end the segment?
I think it's something you said to me once, or at least I thought we had this conversation. Either it was you or we had this conversation about doing things for people, and I think you had mentioned it's not the things you do; it's how you make them feel.
Good. I like that.
And that's really what leadership is. You can do a lot of things for people and make their life easier, but if you don't make them feel like they're part of a group, make them feel good about themselves, or make them feel like they're contributing and have purpose, you can do anything you want, but you're never going to get there.